His background includes serving, am I not being loud enough?
No,
Oh,
it's the
sorry,
microphone.
sorry. Okay. His background includes serving as vice president for development for Easter Seals of DuPage and Fox Valley, and as vice president for Aspire, which serves people with developmental disabilities. He's passionate about social entrepreneurship and has created 2 social enterprises and served in multiple leadership roles in several nonprofit organizations, as well as a variety of consultative and volunteer roles in the areas of HIV, housing, developmental disabilities, and the arts. Eric has a Bachelor of Music and Business degree from Drake University and an MBA from the Keller Graduate School of Business. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Tucker and Mr. Johnson now. Thank you.
Is it okay if I, yeah. That way I can feel like Oprah if I walk around with this. First of all, thank you for inviting us to be here today. I was so taken by and pleased, that's a poor choice of words, but I'll explain why I'm using it in a moment, by the topic and the conversation we're having today. And pleased because I think this is so critically important. It is so very easy for any of us to see somebody who is unhoused and on the street, especially if you see them more than once, to draw an instant definition of who that person is. And it is so very important that we don't do that. It's the trick of how do we get from that knee-jerk reaction to not doing that. We can only get there if we have conversations like we're going to have today. So thank you for inviting us. And also thank you all, and the First United family, for being part of the Housing Forward fabric since before day one. You all have been part of who we are and helped to define who we have become over the last 33 years because you were one of our original partner organizations and continue to be a thriving congregation that is helping us to continue to evolve as an organization. So we are just so very, very deeply appreciative of your partnership, because the way we became an organization and the way that we continue to evolve as an organization is foundational to who we are. Is we know it takes a community, that we know that we cannot do it by ourselves. More importantly, we know we should not do it by ourselves, that we need to work as a community to address the needs of the community. And unhoused individuals are part of the fabric of the community. And how do we help them grow in their role, as being part of the fabric community, by helping them transition from being unhoused and living in places not meant for human habitation to having a permanent, stable home in our community. So that will be a little bit of what we talk about today. So I wanted to give just a very high-level overview of Housing Forward. And then we want to show you a video that we created 2 years ago for our Have a Heart Gala that tells the story of 2 of our clients. One is an individual that you may have known. Her name is Elizabeth, that you may have seen in Oak Park, because she is exactly who we will be talking about following the video today. So as you know, Housing Forward has been in the community for 33 years now. We were founded in 1992. And initially, our primary and exclusive program was the PADS Emergency Overnight Shelter, which was a congregate shelter that moved from congregation building to congregation building throughout the Tri-Village area, Oak Park, River Forest, Forest Park, nightly, from September to May every year. And in our first year, we served 212 individuals doing that. And we continued to do that for 28, going on 29 years, up until March of 2020, when the worldwide pandemic changed everybody's world, including how we work with individuals who are living in places not meant for human habitation. I could spend the next hour talking about that response, but that's not why we're here. But what I would say is what we did during that time was really some exciting and important change for the organization, up to and including renting the Right-In Hotel right around the corner here, which we rented for 3 years. And last December, with the support of Cook County, we were able to purchase to create a permanent home for interim housing for unhoused individuals, focused on transitioning from being unhoused to a permanent home in the community, as well as providing medical respite, which medical respite is a service that is for individuals who've had a major health event, and while they no longer require 24/7 medical care, they do require a safe environment where they can fully recuperate. Imagine if you've been living on the street and have either chemotherapy or significant frostbite that leads to loss of limb or other major medical events, and you go in for hospitalization. Imagine what do you do when it's time not to be in the hospital anymore. You cannot go back to living on the street. It would be inhumane, it would be immoral. But up until a program like medical respite, it was a quandary. So we provide that in conjunction with Cook County Health. But as we have evolved as an organization, our programs have evolved as well. So remember I started by saying we started by providing the PADS emergency overnight shelter. And over the course of year after year in our 3 decades, we began to recognize that while shelter is a critically important component, there are other variables and other ways that we can assist individuals so that we can address the comprehensive issues surrounding their being unhoused. And so we built programs over the ensuing years. And as we've looked at that, we really recognize we have a triad of focus, really focused on the comprehensive issues regarding homelessness. And so our services are designed to prevent homelessness whenever possible. Romiesha, can you help me for 1 second? Because I can't walk and talk at the same time on Sunday morning. So these are just some simple handouts about what I'm about to say. Because we recognize the best way to end homelessness is to prevent it before it begins. For those who are eminently homeless and may be about to lose their home due to eviction or have been found evicted, we go in and we provide not only financial assistance, but services that help address what got them to that crisis point so we don't repeat that in the future. For those who are truly homeless, unhoused, and living on the street, we respond to immediate crisis. And I won't go into all the services under each of these, but the idea is how do we respond to the immediate crisis of being homeless so that we can then begin to transition into services that address those issues and help move someone toward more stable housing. And then finally, we provide services that stabilize through permanent housing. And on the reverse side of that sheet, you'll see a number of programs that we have that support people in having a home in the community. From short-term to long-term to ongoing rental assistance and wraparound support to ensure that while the financial issues are addressed, so are the adjunct issues, whether it's employment, whether it's mental health, whether it's substance use, whether it is psychological issues, or whether it's natural support systems, so that we're building the support somebody needs, that we all need to thrive in the community. So that's who Housing Forward is today. So before I proceed to the video, I wanted to pause just for a quick moment to see, I know I threw a ton of overview information, but if anyone has any overview questions, otherwise I'll shift over to the video and then I'll let Romiesha talk in more specifics about how do we work with the people that we may see on Lake Street and throughout the community. Any questions? Okay, so I may need some help getting this up and running, we'll see. Can you help me?
It's just a client.
Hold the microphone.
If you could help me find that, please? And listen, I'm technically.
It's rewarding. It's hard work. There are times I leave here a bit upset, but meeting them where they are is what makes it possible. From there we continue. It's a tough road, but it's also too rewarding to give up.
Sometimes people think, they don't really think about a human being. They don't see a human being. They don't see that a person may have, some barriers that has kept them from being able to get a job or to be housed. Some people have had mental health issues, and so they don't see that. And so sometimes, like, instead of me saying to the person, they're homeless and they can't help themselves, I said, listen, you could be one paycheck away from being where they're at, right? And nobody chooses to be homeless. And so put yourself in their shoes and think about how life can turn on you,
I have a quip of Derek's. It's simply, Derek wants to move on with love. That in itself is inspirational. That's what he's doing and that he continues to do. Love is everything. Love keeps everyone going. I met Derek when he arrived from Georgia Hospital, and he was really, really sick. He was dealing with lung cancer, which eventually metastasized to his brain.
I went to the hospital for cancer to get treated for my lungs, and the doctor came and visited me and introduced me to housing. I'm homeless, I didn't have no way to go or whatnot. And when I first came here, I introduced to Holly, and Holly gave me a room, and he said, don't worry about nothing. We're not going to put you out on the street. We're going to make you get better and everything.
Derek's challenges ranged from, first of all, just feeling horrible physically with the disease itself. And from there, we dealt with his loss of his daughter that occurred with that drive-by shooting.
Yeah, my daughter just passed away. He went to the gas station, and with the mom, two guys outside, they fight. First I shot at the guy, missed the guy, I catch my daughter in his face, my baby daughter. Same time I go through my cancer and everything. That one thing my grandma teach me, show people love. Yeah, I love to give love and whatnot. I always give people love, show people love and everything.
Derek himself was a true inspiration. He assisted during our Wednesday evening discussions, and we also had another client there that was also going through cancer. He gave her so much encouragement to continue on, fight the fight, stay the course. He was wonderful.
Got group session downstairs. He always make me get in a circle and talk about everything we talk about. And for my birthday, because I know myself, I don't have a birthday, never in my life. One day somebody come and knock on my door, and when I look, his staff then came and bring a cake for me. First time in my life I get a birthday cake.
But I just personally believe that when you see a person outdoors, and 9 times out of 10, there's a reason. Something happened in their life, you know. I don't know what the something is, but whatever it is, you know, I think we should at least start to work on that.
My hopes for Derek's future is that he can maintain his health, maintain his positivity through life, and continue with the peace of mind, which is what everyone needs.
Well, I met Elizabeth while conducting outreach in the downtown Oak Park area. I kept getting calls from the police officers saying that there were a bunch of people sleeping in the Emerson building. And so I went over there, and there were like 15 people sleeping on each floor. And Elizabeth was the only female.
I started needing Housing Forward a long time ago. My grandma raised me, and she passed away and had a reverse mortgage on her house. So it ended up getting foreclosed on. And I would have always been able to go back there if she had been alive, but she's not. So I couldn't stay there and went to a shelter hoping that they would help me because supposedly they said they would, but that didn't end up happening. They told me I had to leave, their program wasn't going to work for me, and I just had nowhere to go.
A lot of times they've been let down so many times until they don't trust. And it is so important to me that when I do this job, that I give it my everything. I give it like the best of me. Because I never want to find myself, you know, in someone's shoes and not say that I didn't do my best to help them. I was grateful to ask her, you know, would she be willing to let me, you know, refer her to interim housing? And she said yes, and then she changed her mind. And it was because she didn't want to leave her friends. And I couldn't tell her, well, think about yourself, leave them, because they're like a family out on the street, and you have to know that. And so I just told her, I said, hey, when you're ready, you have my number, call me. And you're gonna make sure you get there that day. And she thought about it for about a week. And when she called me, it was like the greatest phone call ever, you know. And I was able to get her in right away.
I was with my brother, and we were sleeping in Oak Park in a parking garage in the stairwell because it was heated, and it was like February. And Janetta came in one morning and asked everybody that was there if they needed a place to go. But yeah, she got me in here, she got me a phone, she got me my link card, she got me a ride to go to the methadone clinic and back. She did a lot when I first got here.
And so she started to like blossom, you know, like when I met her, I didn't know what color her eyes were because her head was down all the time, and she had on, you know, she would have on glasses sometime, and I couldn't really see her eyes, and they popped open, and I was like, you have the biggest blue eyes I've ever seen, you know. And she started to gain weight, and she washed her hair, and it was pretty. I was like, are you beautiful, you know? And just to see this flower just blew me away. Like, and it was like one of those moments where I remember like having, well, this is why I do this. You know, it was one of those moments like, this will keep me here another year. Yeah.
The best part about coming to Housing Forward was I had a stable place so people could pick me up, that I knew where I was going to be. I had a phone so I could call them so they could come get me. So I could go to the doctor, I could go to the dentist, I could do what I needed to do. So I can get my hip replacement, which hopefully will be soon. Not having to be out in the rain or the cold. knowing where I'm gonna sleep at night, not having to worry about anything happening to me or, anything like that. That's probably the best part about being here. I have a few goals for right now. Get my hip fixed. Get into my own place and get my kids back. And essentially just to be self-sufficient, to be able to take care of everything on my own, to not need help to do it anymore. I just want to do it myself. They were 2 and 7. My 16-year-old remembers me as her mom. She remembers me taking her to the bus and picking her up and feeding her and whatnot, but my 2-year-old doesn't remember that. So I really want to get to a place where my 11-year-old, she knows that I'm her mom and that I do care.
Because she's had a life before, she fell on hard times. She does know how to navigate through life, and she's kind of like gotten back on the bike. So I would like to see her housed, get her hip fixed, and be a mom in an apartment cooking for her children. That's what I would like to see. Getting them ready for school, that's what I would like to see.
It sucks to have to go after that video. Okay. So I will go over more programmatically. So I'm the director of homeless prevention, diversion, and street outreach. And I'll let you know how all of those are kind of intertwined. So first we'll start off with homeless prevention, because the prevention piece comes before a person becomes homeless. So with my program, it's easier to keep a person housed than to house them after the fact. Because if it's after the fact, there are factors like maybe their credit score. A lot of apartments want 2 to 3 times the rent in order for them to rent to you. And then also, if there's an eviction and it's a recent eviction on that person's record, it's going to be even harder to get them housed, to get a landlord willing to take them in. So homeless prevention is we try to get them right there to stop it. So it's called homeless prevention, but it's also kind of seen as eviction prevention. And so that program is where we help individuals if they have rental arrears. So something happened, maybe it was a loss of job, maybe it was an unforeseen car repair, the head of household got sick, and so there was a loss of income that way in the household, and they ended up, behind on their rent, and then sometimes even utilities, especially if it's an individual who has a housing voucher. A lot of times, if their utilities are disconnected, even though the rent portion has been paid for, if the utilities are disconnected, then that puts them at risk of losing that housing voucher. And they have the housing voucher because they are unable, for various reasons, to afford fair market rent. So we know if they lose that housing voucher, and then eventually they're going to become completely behind in all of their rent payments, and again, that leads to eviction, and the next step could be homelessness. So with homeless prevention, we have different funding sources available to be able to keep that person stably housed. And homeless prevention is different than a housing program and housing assistance, and that prevention, it is generally like a one-time assistance. It's not an ongoing subsidy. So we work with the individual or the household to help them with whatever it was that caused them to fall behind, but we're able to pay a sum to get them caught up, and so that they can move forward. And depending on the different funding sources, we might be able to give them the arrears that they're behind, and then maybe a month or two ahead, just to help them to keep that that foundation. Because when you lose a job or you have some type of financial emergency, it's never just the rent or the utilities that's affected. It's always other bills and and things like that that they're responsible to. So we're able to help them on the rent side or the utility side, then they're able to use that incoming income that they have to kind of pay for the other things that they got behind on as well. But prevention is like we want to keep them housed. We don't want to see the person to end up in homelessness, and so that's where the homeless prevention comes in. And so we receive referrals. You might be familiar with the Suburban Cook Call Center number. So it's a Suburban Cook Call Center number in suburban Cook County, and then the counterpart in Chicago is 211 or 311. It's a non-emergency number. So in the event that prevention is not an option, then my next program is homeless is diversion. And diversion is really, we're talking about like shelter diversion. So we may have an individual who is on the street homeless. We may have an individual who's sleeping in their car, or maybe they're staying with a family member, or maybe they're in their apartment. If they're in the apartment, the sheriff, they know the date that the sheriff is supposed to come, so they know that they're gonna have to be out of that apartment like within the next 7 to 14 days, and they don't have a place to stay. And then again, or they could be on the street, or they could be staying with a friend or a family member, and that friend or family member is like, you can stay here for the week, but then, you got to be gone by next Friday or something like that. And so then that's where my shelter diversion program comes in. And we're really trying to do whatever we can to divert that person from having to go into any type of shelter system, or being like unsheltered homelessness, so out on the street or in their car. And the way that program works is we can do it with case management, like advocacy, things of that nature, and then sometimes we're able to do it with some type of financial assistance. So I'll give a couple examples. We had, she was a senior, and she was disabled, and originally she was living with her son. Her son was on the lease. The mom came later. The mom was not on the lease. The son moved to Atlanta. Nobody let the landlord know that the son had left the apartment and the mom was the one that was in the apartment. She never got behind on her rent. She continued to pay the rent. The son was not paying the rent. He had his own apartment in Atlanta. And this went on. She was in the apartment unknown to the landlord for maybe about like 8 months, until the landlord found out. Once the landlord found out that the son wasn't there anymore, he wanted her out of the apartment because that was not the apartment. That's not who he rented the apartment to. Fair enough. The apartment was like wheelchair accessible, and she did not have another place to go. And the landlord told her that she needed to be out like within the next 30 days. And shelter was full, and also shelter in a wheelchair disabled is not the best setup depending on how the shelter is structured. So I asked her would she be okay if I was able to talk to the landlord to see if we would be able to work out something, because she was scared to have a conversation with the landlord because his communication with her was just that you have to leave the apartment, you have to leave the apartment. So I talked to him and I asked if he would be willing just to create a new lease and to let her stay in the unit. Understandably, he was upset because that's not who he rented the unit to, but you kind of have to, I'm advocating for the client, I'm advocating for the person to stay up in that unit. And the bigger picture was she had been paying rent on time. He had no issues with her, no complaints from any other tenants in the building. He could make her leave. He was gonna have to come in, he was gonna have to spend money to clean the apartment, paint it up, get it, back ready for the next tenant to come in. There was no telling how long the apartment was gonna stay vacant, so he was gonna be losing even more money on rent, and he wasn't sure what kind of tenant he was going to get if he rented to somebody else. When right there, he had a good tenant. He just didn't know that he had the good tenant because he thought the tenant was her son. And so then once I just pointed out the money part, like what his loss was gonna be. We didn't have to pay a security deposit or anything. He just gave her a new lease. He did do a background check on her. It was fine, and he let her stay in the unit. And we didn't have to pay any money. She didn't have to pay any additional money. She got to stay up in there. But that would have never happened because she was afraid to have that conversation with the landlord. So had that not happened, then she would have had to have left the apartment. And even though she did have an income, it was a Social Security income. That income is not 2 to 3 times anybody's rent, whether it's in Oak Park, Cicero, or wherever. So it was going to be very hard for her to be able to, find another unit. And she liked the building. Everything was fine about that. And so that's kind of like, that's how the diversion program works. But then also, sometimes we have people who are staying with other family members, and adults living in one same household can be hard. And so sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, well, you need to leave. And so then when they say, oh, I'm staying with, whoever that person is, and they said I have to leave, well, on our end, we got to dig a little bit deeper. Exactly why, like what happened, walk us through it, explain it to us. And so sometimes it's, maybe they want them, like, you need to be able to pay this bill at least. Like, you're staying here, we live here, this is our apartment or our house or whatever. You need to be able to contribute financially. And then the other person who's getting put out, they may have a little attitude or feel a certain way that they should not have to. But you're staying there. So if you had your own apartment, you would be, paying 100% of all of those bills. So what really is it for you to have to financially contribute to the household, that you're in? Sometimes we get, maybe it's a parent and a child is maybe 18 in that 20 range, and they think they're grown, but they're not really grown, because we know that's not when you're really grown. And so they're kind of going back and forth with the parent, and they, maybe they had an argument, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna leave. And so then they'll call us and say, I'm looking for a shelter. And so then we have that conversation. You have a safe place to stay. All she's asking you do is, to do the dishes or to do whatever. And because you don't want to do that, you want to go into a shelter. This is not a college dorm. This is not a whatever. So you want to leave that and go here. And we just have to have an honest conversation, what your options are. And so then a lot of times, at the end of the conversation, they will, they'll change their mind. Sometimes we have situations where, again, a family member or friend is willing to open their doors to someone, but when you let someone live with you, expenses go up. Cost of groceries go up, the utilities and things like that go up. You can stay, but you need to contribute financially, to the household. Well, our diversion program, we're able to assist with that as well. We're able to do a one-time payment to the person that they are staying with to cover the cost of having that other individual live with them. So again, the option is stay with this person, give yourself a little bit time, we help them find employment programs, whatever it is, whatever other resources that they may need, but they are staying with somebody and they're no longer on the street, no longer, seeking a shelter, because we've been able to kind of put them in a doubled up type situation. And again, a lot of times people just want them to contribute financially because everything does go up. Well, you do have some situations where you can be the nicest person, but you just don't have anyone to be diverted to for various reasons. Like you don't have that friend group, you don't have, that family, and so diversion is just not an option. But then also you have certain situations where there may be shelter space available, but the individual, for various reasons, they do not want to go into shelter. And sometimes that's a hard concept for people to understand. Like, why would you want to continue to stay on the street? Why would you want to continue to stay where you are? Well, it's kind of like what she was saying in the video. they have family. They've created family on the streets. They look out for each other. They have that sense of comfort. And sometimes shelters might not have space for the 5, but they might have the space for the 1 or the 2, and they just don't want to be broken up. And also, Housing Forward, we have one of the nicest shelters, but at the end of the day, it's still a shelter. And it's when you go into shelter, sometimes it can be loud. Sometimes, there are other things going on, and you, the individual, you know how you would deal in that situation. Like when I was in AmeriCorps, Prevail was here, and then it was before the food pantry was beyond hunger. And we would sit out front. There was a gentleman, he was homeless, he was sleeping like a dumpster. And for the longest time, like, he would come and he would get like maybe like the food we used to give out, little food bags, little snack bags. And he would just come and get that, and he would leave. And he would not engage at all. We finally got to a point where he would talk to me, but he would come and he would just get like he would get a hygiene kit, he would get a bag, and then he would leave. And I'm like, okay, that's it. And so then it took a couple weeks for him to get comfortable enough with me to talk with me. And I'm like, I know you're homeless, like, you don't want to, I can have an outreach worker, they can come and talk to you, try to figure out, to get you connected with a shelter. And he said no, and because I'm human, why, right? Because why would you not want to go into a shelter? Well, the way he explained it was he had his own mental illness, and he knew that just was not going to fit well in the shelter environment. So it was safer for him and everybody else for him just to go. And he felt safe sleeping in the garbage cans, like in a garbage can under a viaduct. He felt safer there than there because he knew that depending on what happened, he was not going to be able to control that response. So it's a lot of reasons why people might not want to go to shelter. They could have had a really bad experience in a shelter, and that just has turned them off completely from wanting to go. So it will never be an option. And that's fine, because whether the person is not going to shelter because they don't want to, or they're not going to shelter because there's not shelter space available, there are still programs to help them to be housed. And that's where my street outreach staff comes in. So when there's people sleeping in Scoville Park, or they're hanging out in front of the Starbucks and things of that nature, my outreach staff go out to them like Danette did at the Emerson. So that's part of the team that I manage. And it will take some time to build up a relationship with some people. So sometimes, like, we may get a call and it's like, I told you last week that person, it was like, we know. And we went and we talked, but sometimes it's not always, that friendly welcoming at the very beginning. It takes some time to build the trust. They don't know us. And a lot of times, like saying, I work from Housing Forward, that means nothing to them. And it also could mean everything to them, because it's like, you're another agency, and maybe they just didn't have good experiences before with other agencies. So it takes time to be able to build that relationship. But once that relationship has been built and the person indicates that they want to be housed, then that's when our outreach staff, we work with them to collect the different documents to get them in line for a housing program. But a big piece of that also is the person indicating that they want to be housed. And so we can't push housing on them. We can try to figure out why they might not want to be. And sometimes we have had people who they don't want to, they like being transient, they like the life that they live for other reasons. And sometimes it makes the people on the outside more uncomfortable seeing that, then the person is living it because they're good, they're fine, like they have their systems and everything in place. But the person does have to indicate to us that they do want to be housed. And if they haven't indicated that they want to be housed, the outreach staff, they continue to engage with them and they give them other basic needs. So they continue to give them hygiene kits, give them food. If we have gift cards, food gift cards available, we're able to provide them that. We have our support center out in Maywood where they can come and they do showers and they can also wash their laundry and things like that. And so, you know, every time that they're engaging with their outreach case manager, you know, they'll ask like, you know, have you thought about, you know, housing? You know, is that something you want to work on right now? And if they say no, then it's a no. What else can I help you with? And sometimes it can take a while for them to say yes. Sometimes they don't say yes. Sometimes they do say yes at first encounter. It just really depends and we can't call it. But even if when the person does indicate that they do want to be housed or that they would like to go into shelter, even that process isn't necessarily, it is not speedy, it is not overnight. Right now,
Just want to make sure to save enough time.
oh, for questions? Yeah.
Yeah.
So like right now, our shelters are, they're at capacity. And so our outreach staff and our diversion team is kind of like working overtime to come up with different options for individuals who do want to go, you know, into shelter. But it just, I think like sometimes it's like, oh, once you're connected with an agency, like it's gonna be speedy right there. And unfortunately, that isn't always a speedy process, politics and things of that nature. So I'll let you all ask questions now.
I'm impressed with the diversion program, but does that rely on people calling you?
The question was, does the diversion program rely on people calling us? Yes and no, because we have to find out about them. I was speaking before about homeless prevention and that 877 number. So individuals in a housing crisis, they call that 1877 number, and depending on what the caller indicates they need, that will determine the type of referral that they receive. And so not just Housing Forward, but other agencies in suburban Cook County are also set up to take referrals for diversion, shelter, and street outreach. So that's one way that people get connected to us. The other way that people get connected to us, specifically like in the Oak Park and River Forest community, I'm not sure how many here participate in the Oak Park Homeless on the Oak Park Homeless Coalition, but we, Housing Forward and the Homeless Coalition, we rolled out an encounters form, and we have a bi-weekly street outreach meeting where people from the neighborhood, they identify to us individuals, so it doesn't have to be the person themselves who's saying, I need help. We rely on the community as well, and I'll say like, oh, you know, I noticed there's this lady sleeping in Scoville Park. She has her tent is parked like right over by the statue or whatever. And these are the things that are in the form that's emailed to us, and then I give that to our outreach case managers, our outreach workers, and then they go out in the community to locate and to find those individuals. And then when we do the bi-weekly Oak Park Street Outreach call, we will identify individuals and we'll also see, so this is what Housing Forward is working with this individual on. Maybe Thrive can come in and see if Thrive can, you know, provide them, you know, whatever those services and things of that nature. So it's a full like wraparound type thing. So they call, I also get emailed. I'm very friendly with Vanessa, Amy at the village. There's also on this card that we'll pass out, there's an email address, street outreach, and people, they will let us know about individuals that way. So it's different entry points for a person to get to us. And then also we work closely with the Oak Park Township. So sometimes, especially if it's a client that's on GA, April just let me know last week that one of her GA clients lost their housing, and we're working to identify a diversion person to put her with. So
I'm leaving a bunch of the cards over on the table, and there are more here. So if anyone wants to pick one of those up.
You said you want to describe the street outreach, and then you have two questions.
you said there's street outreach.
Just what they are, what the purpose of them are, real briefly.
Oh, so street outreach, those are like Danette in the video. They go out, they identify the needs of the unhoused individual, and they keep at it just like she kept at it the first time. Oh, the card. Oh, on the card. Sorry. The street. This outreach card. So at the top, that's the 1877 number that I was saying that individuals can call if they're in a housing crisis. So this could be that they're already housed, they need arrears, or this could be maybe they need shelter or something like that. They can call this 1877 number. But then also there is warming center information on here. It's the information, it's food pantry outside of Oak Park for different communities. That's here. It's how to get in contact with Housing Forward and just other resources that a person might need. So veterans, mental health, DV, all of that information is on this card. So it's just like a full resource card.
It's a tool that we've put together that anybody can hand to an individual who is on the streets to say, here is a way we can help. Here are a variety of resources for you. And it's focused on what might a client need. Here's a question back over here and then one back over there as well.
Do you ever get contacted by the landlords or the business community that I have a problem with a tenant, and is there anything you can do to help?
The question was, do we ever get contacted by the landlord or the property manager saying that they have a tenant, and is there anything we can do to help? Yes, all the time. I know a lot of landlords in Oak Park and out of Oak Park. Personally, at this point, but that's a good thing because I want to have good relationships with landlords just in general, and it's good. It's always a good thing when the landlord reaches out to me before the tenant does, because with our assistance, if the landlord is not a willing participant, there's nothing that we can do. So the person could be deemed eligible. I know that I'm going to be able to fund them and provide the assistance, but if the landlord does not want to participate for whatever reason, we can't do anything. So it's always very helpful if the landlord does reach out. On the flip side, just like I need the landlord to participate, the tenant has to participate in the process as well. And so sometimes I'll tell the landlord, like, oh, we do have funding available or whatever, and I'll send them the process, and they go through that process, and we're able to assist if we can. Sometimes the landlord will give us the tenant's name and information, and we'll try to contact them. But it's always good to have a landlord that's willing to work with us, because that means that they do want that tenant to stay, and they're very understanding of that. And then there.
Do you recommend giving this to homeless people that we see on the street, or talking with them about it?
The question is, do we recommend giving the outreach card to the homeless individuals on the street, or talking to them? Either or, it's a preference. If you give it to them, I mean, it's a better resource for them to have. You know, just it'll fit in their pocket. That's why we made them so small. But to hand to them and to say, you know, these are some resources that you might want to reach out to. So yeah.
And are these available to the Venezuelan refugees as well?
Yes, the outreach card can go to anyone. So it doesn't matter if they're Venezuelan migrant or whatever. Like the outreach cards you can provide them to anyone.
Can I jump in? We probably didn't describe it super well. So we print those and we try and distribute them to businesses, the local police throughout the 26 communities we serve, to social service providers, to local governments, so that a variety of resources have them available to either have a conversation, to your question, or to hand off to a client. Hopefully they do both, you know? But the idea is that's a resource that, like, as Romiesha just said, can put in your pocket, and you can that a client can come back, an unhoused person can come back to time and time again, say, I'm in need of food. Oh, here's a resource for me, et cetera, et cetera. Does that answer the question?
Because a lot of the food pantries also operate on different days. So it's not like, you know, they have to try to be at 3 different places at one time. And so,
3 minutes, and I think we have a couple minutes.
okay.
Well, first I want to thank you both for coming this morning, and I have 2 comments. The first is like a procedural logistics question. When you do like those one-time payments, is it like a payment directly to the client, or do you pay the landlord?
The question is, how do the one-time payments, the rental assistance payments go? They go to the landlord. We give the funding to. So that's why I said if the landlord doesn't want to participate, then there's nothing that we can do because the payment is made to the landlord and or property manager. It's not.
Is it checks, money order? I mean, like it's gotten harder to figure out how landlords want to be paid.
Generally, it's either ACH or it's a paper check. That's it.
Okay. All right.
And the next question?
Yeah. And the second is actually like a PSA. So our church has signed up to do a meal at the shelter at St. Catherine, St. Lucie on Monday, January 27th. And we'll be looking for folks to bake chili, cornbread, and to help serve dinner. So keep a lookout. We need kind of a small group of volunteers that night.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. There's
is Housing Forward working to purchase another building in Oak Park for emergency shelters? I had heard some kind of story like that.
There's 2 things going on, because one thing that makes us so, I think, unique is we're always looking to what's next. You know, we don't just slow down. We are working to, and I don't know if this has been in local media, there is a building on South Boulevard that Accolade Services used to be located in. We are working to move our emergency shelter to that location, so it's actually a little bit better suited than we are right now at St. Catherine St. Lucie's Rectory building. It will also allow us to increase, the village has asked us, can you increase the number of people you serve at their shelter? So allow us to grow from 20 individuals on any given night to 40. So that's one thing that is in the very near future. We have to put sprinklers, fire sprinklers in before we can take occupancy. You may have seen in the local media, I know it's been covered several times, we are working with Interfaith Housing Development Association to create a permanent supportive housing building in Oak Park that would have 36 units of permanent supportive housing. They would be the project developer, we'd be the primary program partner on that. That is currently, they're in the final steps of lining up financing, so that's a longer term project. We've learned over time, nothing is done till, nothing's final till it's final. So, but that is in development, and everyone keep your fingers crossed for us.
Thank you.
I think we have like one more question.
If you don't mind staying around for a couple
Not at
minutes,
all.
I know some people have to leave,
Yeah.
but we could go for a few extra minutes.
Sure.
Can I just say one quick thing about the cards too? I put a bunch over there, and feel free to grab several to hand to people if you encounter people that are looking for help on the street. Some of the numbers have not been updated, most of them have, but that main number is working,
It stays
and
the
that
same.
can help
Yeah,
get to the right people. So feel free to use those.
Marcia, do
Yeah.
you think there'll be a program next week?
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you, Dale. Love having people in the, to help, keep things going. Yes, next week, Pastor Phil is going to speak to us about, the title we have given his session is What Would Jesus Do? Okay, we've learned a lot about what not to do. We've learned about some of the resources that are available, but now this is the Christian perspective as compassionate people that want to help but don't want to contribute to the problem of people on the streets not seeking the help they need, or people who have mental health issues not seeking that help. He's going to help bring us together as a community of faith. Thank you.
Could you just say the one thing about the warming shelters?
yeah. Do you want me to, or you want me to?
Oh, the volunteers are needed at the warming shelters. I think that they're communicating that in the past, Housing Forward, we have taken the lead on warming shelters. This year, the village is taking that need, and they are in need, taking care of that need, and they're always in need of volunteers. I believe the volunteer link is on the village website. It is. It's on the village website. So if you're so inclined to go to the website to sign up, I do not know for certain. I have a feeling because the weather tomorrow is supposed to be 13 degrees. And so we had 13, I think there's like 7 and 9, so they might be running, but they haven't announced.
So the warming center is designed for any period of time that inclement weather is forecasted to continue for more than 3 days. They initiate a warming center. It's not a shelter where people can go and sleep overnight. It is intended to be a safe place where people can go and get warm and have either a snack or, depending on the situation, a meal. So just to draw that distinction. The village is in charge of saying, okay, time to do a warming center, and to deploy volunteers. We are a partner to support that effort. We just want to make it a village-wide initiative as opposed to strictly a Housing Forward initiative, if that draws a little distinction.
Oh, and just the location is at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church and the libraries, and they're looking for 4-hour shifts.
Yeah, and that's all on the village website. I
Yeah, it's all
believe.
on the...
Any other questions? If there are any landlords in here and you have any if there are any landlords here and you have any tenants that are behind, please see me before you leave.
Thank you so much for coming.